since we started late and therefore I have less minutes than I thought to present my paper, I think I'm just going to go through my slides and explain them briefly to you, although this is not reflecting the whole paper I intended to present today. One of the questions I bring to my colleagues in Latin American studies is how are indigenous voices conceived, observed, studied, and taught in 2-year and 4-year US institutions. And what I have done has been to analyze the textbooks that we are using to teach Latin American literature. And it is surprising to find out that in these textbooks that start always in year 1492, indigenous writers or texts are not included. And this is the idea of Latin American Indians that we are transmitting in our classes. They don't make it to the literary canon. The other question I ask is what stereotypes are being reinforced or conceptualizing a Latin American nativeness, if I can talk about the term. And the first picture depicts the black legend of the Spanish cruelty against the Indians in the Americas, which presents the Indians as a victim. They are victimized and therefore they are perceived as innocent children that other group of Spaniards have to protect. And this other picture comes from an episode of Star Trek, the very first Star Trek, where images of Native Americans are used as examples of aliens, no, extraterrestrial societies. I know that I am running out of time, but just let me finish with the slides. One case that exemplifies Latin American studies and indigenous people is that we have a very good number of Indian authors in the late 16th, early 17th century. And these authors, and I was thinking about that with the first panel today, they all started as lawyers. They learned to read and write. These are Indian authors, first, second generation, and they learn and read, they learn to read and write, excuse me, because they know that they have to know Spanish and they have to communicate in Spanish in order to be able to achieve their goals. And they always start being the equivalent of lawyers, public notaries at that time. And this is one of them, perhaps the most famous one, Felipe Guamán Poma de Ayala, with a chronicle written in 1613. That produced a massive book of 1,200 leaves, in which he's just describing the colonial Indian society. This, I'm going to go very fast. The other topic of conversation is that due to the expectation of community engagement in academia, I started working with K-12 teachers of the Michigan area to study how, or to look at how Indians are depicted, Latin American Indians, excuse me, in K-12 textbooks. And this is usually, these are the features that appear in K-12 textbooks. Latin American Indians are uncomplicated, appear in timeless spaces, romanticized, idealized, they lack agency, they are always smiling, and they usually appear happy in a rural space, and if they appear in a urban space, they seem oppressed. To end my presentation today, I just want to share with you some ideas that I am having and that I'm using while teaching this topic in my undergraduate classes. First, to transmit the idea to our students that we should go beyond the idea of the museum token, the exotic Indian, without a context. Someone mentioned this idea in one of the panels before. To study, I think it's very important to study within the first-hand experience, and this is a call to the scholars. I do not conceive work on Latin American Indians without field study, even if one comes from the literature realm like me. I do field study. To rebuild the continuity and fill the gaps, that's a typo, blanks that give the impression of silence, absence of indigenous voices. This is what is happening in the college textbooks. It appears that there were no indigenous authors in 500 years of Latin American literature, and to educate scholars, teachers, and policymakers, and to include programs and tracks of Amerindian studies. This starts with something very simple. I am currently the acting director of IH here at Michigan State, which is in charge of general education in arts and humanities. And we program like 500 sections a year. This year, and this is a nice outcome compared to previous years, we have 5 sections on Native American or American Indian topics taught among 500 sections. But this is better than nothing, as it happened before. Thank you very much.